Rachel Howzell Hall, welcome to the Rocky Mountain Writer Podcast.
Thank you for inviting me here, Mark. It's wonderful seeing you again.
Well, and the reason is we're all so excited. You are one of the invited keynote speakers for our big annual conference. So we are eager to check in with you, and maybe we'll get a little sneak peek of some of the previewing, some of the themes you might hit on.
Yes.
Yeah, and the
I
conference,
can't wait.
yeah. The conference is October this year. Did you get an invitation to the previous year before the pandemic canceled? Or was this?
This is the first. I
Okay.
did attend the Rocky Mountain, no, the Pikes Peak,
Right.
Writers Conference.
Right.
So this will be my first time with the Colorado Gold,
Right.
this organization.
Right.
Yes.
Well, Pikes Peak is very well renowned, but Colorado Gold is just a little bit better. No, I'm just kidding. I'm
Yeah.
kidding. We're all good friends out here in Colorado,
Yeah.
the writing community. So we are eager to have you out. What motivates you to take invitations along these lines? You've got a busy life, which we'll get into, but why do this?
Well, I have, a lot of readers are just meeting me right now, but I've been at this for a while now. My first novel was published September 11th, 2002. And it has taken me, this long to find the career, win the career, earn the career that I've wanted way back at the beginning of the 2000s. And I learned a lot. I lived a lot. My journey was not conventional, nor was it easy. And I want to share that. I like sharing what I've learned and what has worked for me, the hacks, the strategy, all of it. I like sharing that. And whenever someone asks, and if I can do it, I try to say yes, because, I always think because I've been bitten so many times, it's like, well, there's going to be a point when no one asks me to do anything. So I need to say yes. And I want to say yes because there's some writers who may need to hear from me in order to get started on their journey. So I'm a very, even in my day job, I like do good, and I carry that over to my novel writing life.
Yeah. Yeah, you mentioned so much right there. I mean, the fact that you are still working, yet
Yeah.
your award, you've had so many awards, you've been nominated for so many big awards. You're just really being productive right now. Obviously, the pandemic did not slow you down, or maybe it was a matter of
No.
time.
No, I actually sold 2 books during the pandemic, but that's because, you always just keep going. And, for a lot of us, a lot of writers, books were therapy for us. They saved us as little kids from whatever was going on in our lives back then. And it's something that I look forward to. My husband always says, you need to relax sometimes. It's like, I am relaxing. I'm around words. Words have been my friend since forever. And it's that love that, keeps me going. And also our genre, you and I, we're both crime writers. And unfortunately, fortunately, that's one thing that the world does not, lack. We have lots of stories to tell. And now with everything that's gone on in the past 15 months, there are even more stories to tell. So, like you, I'm just trying to get to all the stories that I want to tell. And that keeps me going.
That's great. So one thing I think folks might be really interested in, and you've talked about this before, and I don't mean to take you back over familiar ground, but for people who are just getting to know you, you had some early novels that you had agents for and potentially almost sold, or not, maybe they languished for a while, but you decided to self-publish. Then
Yeah.
you got a contract and you had a really strong series character, Elouise Norton. Fantastic books. I read 2 of them and loved them.
Thank you.
And then now you're into sort of these standalone, what I would almost call high concept thrillers, still crime fiction, very clearly. But you really have, your career has evolved.
Yeah. Yeah, it has. back when I wrote my first novel in 2002, when it was published in 2002, I had a great legacy publisher, Scribner, and it was a trade paperback. But I was 33. This was exciting. My first book, even though it was published on the first anniversary of 9/11, and that kind of sucked. I was still excited, and I thought that I would be able to, immediately sell a second book, and not so much. Back in 2002, there was a different type of writing that publishers were looking for. It was a very urban fiction, Sister Soldier kind of very East Coast idea of what Black lives were about. And seeing that I'm from Los Angeles, and we have even a different look of what being working class Black is, and that usually is without snow and palm trees. They didn't get it. And so the second novel that I wrote was not sold. My first agent, Wendy Sherman, was incredible. She was wonderful. But, she couldn't help. She couldn't sell this story. And so sadly, we broke up. But I kept writing. I kept living. There are some hard things in my life that, kind of tried to throw some obstacles at me, my health for one. But, you write around that. And I kept writing. And there were two stories. It's funny because back then I didn't know I was writing or interested in writing crime fiction. But with every story I was writing, I was getting closer and closer to crime. My first book was cataloged as psychological suspense. There is a death in a body. But it was, it was literary fiction with psychological suspense. And so around 2011, I still hadn't landed. Well, I had agents on and off, because every time I wrote something like, this is great, but it's not Black enough, said the editors. And, I have, the letters that say that. And around 2011 or so, Amazon came out with the Kindle platform. And this one story, The View from Here, that I love and came close to selling, but didn't sell, I decided to put it up on this Kindle, what is this new Kindle self-publishing thing. And I loved that book. It was like Ghost meets Gaslight. And I got some readers, but I grew a little bolder with where I was, wanting to go. And I then wrote No One Knows You're Here, and got another agent. And then they tried to sell that, and it didn't sell. And I put that on the self-pub platform. But this is when I knew that I wanted to write a procedural, because the story is about a reporter who investigates the serial killer who's terrorizing women, killing women on the south side of the South Los Angeles, where I'm from. At the same time, one of those obstacles was looming large in my life, and it was cancer. When I was 33, I was diagnosed with a rare breast cancer when I was pregnant with my daughter. And, I had to have a partial mastectomy when I was 6 months pregnant with her. And though she was born healthy, and, we both made it through, and I thank UCLA for that. 3 or 4 years after that, I had a second scare. And this is right after, putting No One Knows You're Here up on the self-publishing platform. And when I got the second diagnosis, and cancer was obviously going to be a part of my life and maybe take my life, I was like, well, what is it that I want to do before leaving this world at 37 years old? And there are two things, and you've heard me tell the story. I wanted a Mercedes Benz. Growing up in Los Angeles, there's this car culture. I see maybe 4 or 5 Bentleys a day just going to the grocery store. It's a car culture.
Definitely.
And yeah, I wanted my luxury car that I had said to myself, before everything happened, that I was going to award myself at the age of 50. 50 was going to be when I get my Benz. But now it's like, well, I may not reach 50. So I'm going to get my car now. So I got my car. And then the second thing I wanted to do was to write a proper procedural. And at this time, Walter Mosley had published Devil in the Blue Dress, and Terry McMillan had published waiting to excel. And I wanted to be like the Venn diagram of both of those novels. I wanted a contemporary, modern Black LAPD homicide detective who I went to school with, who went to UC Santa Cruz, um, who had friends and lovers and shoes and crime and drama. I wanted to tell that story. And so, you know, my husband's like, okay, well, I'll send you to Writers Police Academy. Okay, I'll send you to, I'll a trip to Left Coast Crime and you can meet experts and start figuring out how to do this. And, you know, initially I was scared. I'm not a cop. I'm not a reporter. I'm not any of those things that you find, you know, those professions where you write a procedural, you know, none of those things. I'm a fundraising writer. But I'm no longer scared because I actually gone through the scary thing someone could go through, and that's the threat to your life. I, you know, gone through the cancer thing. I was now on a long course of tamoxifen, chemotherapy for 5 years. Scared of writing a book? No, I'm good. So I started writing. In help of the community around me, I came up with this book about Lou Norton, who, you know, was responsible for, you know, finding out who did it. You know, she was wholly authentic. Um, there was some issue. I got another agent, Joe Marshall, down in San Diego, who loved my voice, and then we went out. And there were some editors who were like, this is nothing special. And I was like, you know, bristling at that because Paula Wood was the only Black writer in LA writing Black female homicide detective.
Right.
So it's like, how do you mean this is nothing special? There's
Yeah.
only been one. And yeah. So, but I ignored that and we kept on until we found Kristen Sevick, my wonderful agent at Forge, who loved it. And that's my cat, if you can hear him. But Forge loved the series. They bought two and then they bought two more. And then, you know, all the other stuff came. The James Patterson novella came, and then they bought They All Fall Down, and now she's gone. And you know, it's been incredible. And I've worked the entire time. I've had health issues, you know, continuous the entire time. I've raised my daughter, who's just wonderful and is now 17. I continue to read to my husband, who has heard every story I've written, starting when we were first dating in my little studio apartment in Los Angeles, my very bad prose. You know, he is still sending me on right-away vacations, you know, just me and my manuscript. Because again, as I was saying, I love this. I love writing. I love the process. I love figuring out how to tell the same stories that have been told since the beginning of time, but from my perspective and what I think. I work out a lot of stuff through my writing, like, you know, so many of us. And yeah, I've learned how to get in and out of scenes, but it all takes doing it over and over and over again, and reading a lot and seeing a lot of movies, and you know, listening to how people tell stories. It's all encompassing, but again, I love it.
Yeah.
And I can't wait to share, you know, what I've learned with so many people who are probably watching this right now.
Yeah. I love that line. You work out a lot of stuff, because
Yeah,
one thing I loved about Lou Norton, and I shouldn't put it in the past tense, I'm sure she's still around,
she's
but
still around somewhere.
yeah. And also with All Falls Down, which I also enjoyed immensely, you really have an ability to inject attitude onto the page. And I
Thank
know,
you.
yeah, I mean, you know, what I found is it just so quickly oriented me to her world. Within the first few pages, I know you can overdo this, but she's got a clear opinion about her relationships, about her
Hmm.
cohorts, her colleagues. Even she'll opine on her surroundings, on the quality of this, you know, maybe it is a car or a house. She'll clearly not just, it won't be just a house she's going into. She'll tell us what she thinks of that house.
Yeah, yeah,
And I
yeah.
think that's a really interesting lesson that we all writers have to learn. But is that something you've always done, or is that something you've developed? And do you agree with me?
Yeah, I do, and it's both. I was a very observant child, sometimes to my detriment. I journaled as a kid. I wrote in my diaries, which I still have, starting in fourth grade up until maybe 2 years after college. Um, and I would make observations about who said what. And it's like my family can never say, I didn't say that. It's like I have a diary, and on October 13th. So I was always paying attention. Um, that was one thing I kind of missed during the pandemic, is being out and paying attention. But I paid attention in other ways when we were all quarantined. But yes, I like looking closely and listening closely to how people say things, or how the sky looks and how my eyes are feeling as that sky is looking like that. Um, in Skies of Ash, I mentioned the KFC, but it's not just any KFC. It's a KFC that always leaves the biscuits out. And there's a KFC down the hill from me that freaking either runs out of chicken. It's like, well, how do you run out of chicken and you're a KFC?
Yeah.
Or they don't put your biscuits in. And so I catalog these little indignities throughout the city of Los Angeles and across life, so that when it's time to build out my story, they're right there. I keep a lot of things in Evernote. That's one of my hacks. Like even the smallest things, and I enlist my husband and my daughter in sending me weird or interesting things they see throughout their day. It could just be like this tiny thing of a woman. Oh, she mispronounced. I can't even remember what the word was, but her friend had said the word correctly. It was a French word, I believe. And this woman corrected her and it's like, that's not how you say beignet, you say beignet or something like that. And I'm like, well, that's great, because she's this know-it-all who knows nothing. I have to have her one day. It may not be this novel, it may be 3 novels from now, but she will be there. So yeah, I catalog things, and I do have opinions. And growing up in my family where we're all very opinionated, there's a time when you just shut your mouth. And I try to give that to my characters. It's like, you can yap, but there comes a time when you just shut up and listen and plan your next step. It's all a chess game in terms of how characters move through a room, what they say and what they choose not to say, what they think, and all of it. I plot it out, but I think it comes naturally for me because it's a habit I've always done.
That's great.
Yeah.
One thing I want to talk about is your upcoming novel, because I want to get them excited to go out and buy it in August. That one? Oh, you are. Were you prepared for that, Rachel?
Yeah, me?
No.
Prepared?
Hold it up again. Let's see it one more time.
These
Okay.
toxic
So
things.
one very cool thing about this, we're talking in late June, but this book comes out in August. So no excuses.
It's September.
Oh,
September
I thought it was
1st.
August. I thought it was
It
August.
was August, and then it was switched to September.
Still, my point is,
Yes.
still, there's plenty of time to buy it and read it before you come to Colorado.
Yes. And
And
I'm going to be talking about it because I do some different things with this. It had their illustrations, which is very exciting to me,
what?
and little vignettes. They're little,
What?
yeah, yes. This is a bad example because this is an arc, but they're little vignettes that I write. So little stories within stories, and every story within a story has I'm trying to find one that you could actually see that will have an illustration to go with it, because it's a story about a scrapbooker, a digital scrapbooker basically, who creates these things called memory boxes. It's like an Alexa device, and she writes for her clients little stories of tchotchkes that may mean something to someone. So this pair of glasses may have been my grandma's. And so she'll write a little story about how special these glasses are. And so with every little vignette, there's an illustration of that thing.
Gotcha.
So this is a little music box. and this is the arc, so this is not the
Right.
real illustration, but they're peppered throughout the book. And so it's playing with story and form and stories within stories. And I'm excited about it because, Mickey, our digital um, arch- archaeologist, scrapbooker, she is curating the memories of a woman of her client who's found dead in the little shop she owns. So while it's kind of procedurally, it's a story about family and memories and how my mother may remember something and she looks fondly upon it, but I will remember something and it was horrifying to me. So it's playing, with that. And this was actually my quarantine novel that I wrote because I'm sure a lot of us were, it was like, what do we do? And we did a lot of projects, and a lot of those projects were cleaning out closets and finding things in those closets and saying, oh my God, remember when we did this? And so that's what this novel is about. It's like, remember when that happened? It's like, yeah, I don't want to talk about it. Or, you're confronted with a lot of things that you didn't know about. And that object, these glasses, will bring that up. So yeah, my stories always kind of seem simple, and then they kind of like do that. So this is another kind of like, oh, she's curating memories, and then it kind of does that.
And also set in Southern California or LA.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, in Los Angeles. Yeah.
You're staking out your ground there other than, um,
I love this city. It's like it makes me sick sometimes, but there are so many parts that, people outside of Los Angeles, there's sometimes even people in Los Angeles don't know about. And one of those parts of LA is where I live in the Crenshaw area, the Black and Brown area, south of the 10, as I say. And so, yeah, it's all kind of things are happening in this part of the world, including lots of gentrification. Um, my house is worth more than what I can pay for it now. So yeah, LA is ripe for a lot of things, and yeah, I get very possessive about my city.
right. Even with All Falls Down, she's from Southern California, but
Hmm.
most of it takes place on an island. But
Yeah,
Southern California still plays a role. And I didn't read And
and
She's
now she's
Gone.
gone.
I didn't read
And now
And
she's
She's,
gone.
yeah,
Yeah,
Now
and
She's Gone.
that's an LA story.
Yeah,
Um, and it the city, of course, plays a part in that, especially our streets and highways, because a lot of living is done in liminal spaces, and Angelinos especially live our lives between destination to destination, and we're usually on the highway. And that's, what the story is, partly about. Women trying to leave from this place to that place, either mentally or physically, and both. So yeah, and about what makes And Now She's Gone special to me, there's a story within a story, surprise. There's the procedural part where Grayson Sykes, the new private investigator, is charged with finding Isabel Lincoln, who is a woman who doesn't want to be found for reasons, right? There's that story. And then there's a story within it where it's the story of a woman named Natalie Dixon who is trying to get out of a bad marriage. And it's a domestic abuse story. And that story, that domestic abuse story, was actually the second novel I was trying to sell after A Quiet Storm in 2002.
wow.
It was not bought. Part of that is because, yes, publishers were looking for a different type of Black experience. But also, I didn't know how to write that story. It was titled The Flight of Venus. And that's actually the name of a Harry Houdini trick, his disappearing woman trick. And it was a woman trying to disappear. And I didn't know how to write it. It didn't sell, but I kept thinking about it because I had something to say. I just didn't know how to say it. So it took me living, going through cancer, raising a daughter, writing View from Here, No One Knows You're Here, all four of the Lou Norton novels, and they all fall down before I finally figured out, ah, I know how to write this story. And it was a procedural with the domestic suspense story nested inside. And so I'm saying this especially to new writers, just because something doesn't sell, do not throw it away. That's going to be one of the things I harp on the most when I come to Colorado, because I can testify that that second novel is now, part of a novel that was nominated for Los Angeles Times Book Prize. It it may not work when you're doing it, but obviously there's some living you need to do and some reading you need to do and some just listening and sitting to figure out how to do it. It may take you a long time. It may take you, 3 months, but it'll come. And, there's this thing called, Microsoft Word and files and drafts, and you can just yoink it and write it the way it needs to be. So, yeah, I
Would,
love that novel
yeah,
because it's like the story. I thought this was going to sell back then. It's like, this wasn't the story I was supposed to tell.
and maybe it's a good thing it didn't, obviously. Yeah,
Yeah, I'm glad it didn't.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
that's great. Um, I feel like we could talk all night. Rachel, you're just such an easy person to chat with, and we've
Thank
had the
you.
pleasure of
I've
being
chatting a
together in
long
meetings
time.
with Mystery Writers of America, things like that. So
Yeah.
everybody knows how approachable you are and how engaging. Well, one thing I just want to ask you about real quickly, and I know obviously this topic could go on for a while, and so I don't mean to give it short shrift and give it as much time as you want to, but there is a shift now, I think, in publishing. There have been some issues around, well, let's just put it out there, 100 years of publishing white writers
Hmm.
out of the big publishers. There have been issues with conferences and how conferences have run themselves and managed issues. Do you feel like, what's your assessment of where we are, I guess? Are we making progress? Are we just beginning to chip away at this? What's your
Right.
what's your assessment?
I think we are just beginning to chip away at this earnestly. There have been attempts, but those attempts have been mostly performative, where there is like no meaningful change. It's like, okay, we got our Black writer, we got our Asian writer, we have our gay writer, and then you check the box off and you move and you return to how it's been. But you're like, well, you can't come and say anything because we had that one Black person. So I think back then it was performative. Now I think we're in a place where not only are people of color and people of differing, sexualities and all the rest, we're not the only ones saying things need to change. Now our white allies are saying the same thing. I'm seeing a lot of my white friends saying, yeah, I'm not going to be on that panel until, this is representative of the genre of America, of the world. And that's where we need it. I mean, folks get tired of Black people saying stuff, but Black people are always the ones who say stuff first. And as effective as we are, we still need you, to say, yeah, that's not right. And I'm not going to uh, participate. I'm not going to amplify. I'm not going to do anything until you do better. And now it's sticking. Now people are thinking twice when they're doing panels. Now there's hesitation, more hesitation when thinking about, yeah, they're all bestsellers, so they have to all be what, that whole thing. That there was an earlier kerfuffle either earlier this year or something, where it was a bestsellers panel and it was all white. And it's like, well, are there no, colored bestsellers, gay bestsellers? Did you try? So I think people, they're learning, and that's a great thing. And I think publishers are seeing past the trends and are looking for more than one story. Black stories don't all have to be East Coast with tenements and that kind of thing. They're looking beyond, and that's a great thing. I hope we continue in that. I hope non-white writers receive the contracts and the marketing and the support they need, because another part of the problem is publishers can do all this, but they still have to convince white readers that these stories are worth reading. I mean, you'll have white women who would who see themselves more in vampires and, you know, non-human creatures than in a Black protagonist. And we have to change that.
Yeah.
That's difficult, but we have to, because if no one buys the story, then the publishers are going to be like, well, no one's interested in Black stories. No one's interested in Latinas who are, you know, the Latina version of anything. So yeah, we still have a long ways
Yeah.
to go in terms of also, you know, convincing. And it's weird because as a Black kid growing up, I didn't see an issue with me reading Stephen King. Those kids in Bangor, Maine, those, you know, that young girl, high school girl named Carrie, who was going through stuff, I didn't see her as just a white girl in Maine.
Right.
I saw her as me. I didn't have the luxury to not read, because back then, especially, all books were white. But I saw myself in Jackie Collins' Lucky Santangelo. I wanted to be a Italian mob boss princess. You know, it's like other cultures have to adapt to white cultures. So now it's time for you to say, huh, what is that story about Lou Norton? Sure, she's Black, but she's a woman. She has a sister. She has a mother who is constantly disappointed in her. She has a husband who's a jerk. I can relate to that.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't take a big leap to, you know, open this book and say, Nikki Lambert, yeah, she lives in her parents' back house and she's doing this kind of cool job and she's getting in trouble. That's not a Black thing or a white thing, or, you know, it's a people thing. So yes, we
Well,
all need to advocate for each other, and we all need to help our readers explore beyond what they're used to reading.
and I get the sense and the feeling that as you come out to writers' conferences and when you come out to Denver, I have a feeling you've got your eye out in the crowd for those little folks that just need a little encouragement,
Yes.
and who are seeing what can be a very confusing and complicated, busy
Yeah,
career, and how do we encourage and nurture those voices to get out there?
definitely, definitely. No, I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to people who want to roll up their sleeves and move beyond talking it and actually doing it. What's Yoda's favorite, his most favorite famous quote is something like, there is no try, only do, or something like that. And I'm about that. It's like, I just don't tell me that you want to be a writer, show me that, you know, and that's what our business is. We don't tell, we show. And I'm looking forward, you know, to helping those writers figure out how to do.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, final question, just as a way to wrap up and pay it forward, Rachel, is just an opportunity for you to recommend one other writer out there. It can be one of those undiscovered folks. It could be, you know, somebody at your level or even above that you just think is wonderful. So now's your chance.
Right. I'm a cheat and say two, because everybody already knows Sean Cosby, S.A. Cosby is incredible. By now, you know, it's you Razor Blade Tears has been out. So that
Blacktop Wasteland, #1.
and yes, that was an incredible read. Incredible
Incredible.
read. And then Jess Lowry, Lourey, who I absolutely love, and we've been on the same kind of path, had some of the same kind of challenges.
Yep.
But in October, I believe, October, November, her next litany, Litani, will be out. She published Bloodline earlier this year, and Unspeakable
I think
Things.
I think
Unspeakable Acts.
Impossible Things was first, and this is Bloodlines is second. I think.
Yeah, Bloodline second, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
pick her up. If you like mystery that's kind of like Rosemary's Baby, kind of creepy small town type stuff, then you'll love Jess.
Awesome. Yeah, Jess is
Yeah.
wonderful too. So
Yes, she is.
yep.
Yes, she
Yep.
is.
Well, Rachel Howzell Hall, my apologies. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast, and we'll look
Oh,
forward to seeing you in October.
I look forward to seeing you in October.
All right.